Killdeer. Let's see, I got another one here. Bird calls. I don't know what that was. That's a Himalayan mocker. Supposed to be able to do 3 different birds with this one. They're fun. There's a guy that makes these out of rosewood, and we used to be able to get them over at Van Tannen, but there was about 30 of them in there. You used to be able to get them for about $125, and now you can't get them for under $1,000. So much for the price of things. Anyway, tonight, Rhoda Jensen is going to read, and then Jon Veinberg is going to read, and then we're going to have some music. Patrick Snowden, and who else? Oh, Margaret Tynan. Oh man, we got talent for you tonight. One announcement I'm going to make is the Valley Improvisational Players will be here Wednesday the 19th at 9 o'clock at, right here. I made that announcement because Mike Beavers is a good friend of mine, and he loans me the video equipment to tape this. I like to get tapes. I've got audio tapes for the last 3 years, and another announcement is we have the Poets have a radio show now that comes on the 4th Friday of the month. It's only about half an hour, but we get a chance to read poetry, and poets can come on and read to over KFCF and talk about poetry. Tune in. Things are happening. I think most of you are probably familiar with Jon Veinberg. Oh, we're going to turn the tape over. I got to get these tapes for the radio show. You ready? You hear a bird whistle? Yeah, you like birds? I don't do that. Just lay over on the side. Himalayan mucker. Let's go to coyotes. No. Okay, we got a tape on there. Jon Veinberg is published in a number of different magazines. He has his own book out, which is Nothing About the Dead. Beautiful book, done by Eugene Zimwalt on Zimwalt Press, one of the most beautiful books I've seen. And it's for sale around here somewhere. I don't know if he brought any copies of it. John's published in Poetry Magazine. I have an introduction. I got to introduce him on the radio the other day, and I've improved this a little bit. Let me read it to you. An inner voice, in his poems, there is an inner voice that takes you to a world of enlarged horizons. A world so unpredictable and dynamic in its conditions that caution becomes a virtue and timidity is punished. Poems that have a quality of wandering and roving in a world of vision, which is willed and invented and inspired. His poems are able to give sanction to migrancy or wandering, and some of his poems have a callousness and cruelty and pretentiousness, and they're the subjects that he uses to create the form. And his poems are very fluid. He has the ability to start from one poem and go to another, which I've never been able to do. I can build out from the center, and he goes. And there's read this. Anyway, I love this guy's poetry, and he touches us all, he really does. And he seems to be able to not only create, but destroy certain things that probably should be destroyed in terms of a world that is too predictable. And before I stumble all over the place, Jon Veinberg.
I have become a big fan of Moulton's legendary introduction. Somehow or another, I get this pumped up feeling that when he squints into those lights and says, "Are you ready, Jon?" I feel like I'm going to win a bedroom ensemble and The Price is Right. So I do thank you for those deep and noble words. But the actual truth is, in real life, I'm a lot more fun than that. I think I've made a habit out of reading this poem here, largely because the poem was conceived across the street at Mayfair Market at about 3 o'clock in the morning. For those of you who've ever been there, being at Mayfair Market at 3 o'clock in the morning is not a great experience. You have to wait in this everlasting line. And you have a lot of time to think. And if you think like me, you will come to the conclusion that if you have to be at Mayfair Market at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or Saturday, something is not right with your life. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to know that if you look around, these people are buying these desperate items, and they are desperate items. There's diapers, sunflower seeds, aspirin, canned menudo. Every now and then someone tries to sneak through the line with a six-pack past this checker whose reflexes are completely shot. And I was in that line. And when I got down to the magazine rack, being a literary person, I read the National Enquirer. And inside the National Enquirer was an article on King Tut. When I got done with that article, I kind of mused to myself, thinking, this would not be too bad being buried next to King Tut. And that's the premise of this poem. It's a conversation I have with King Tut after having been buried next to him. It's a one-sided conversation because I'm doing all the talking. Next to Tut. You know, Tut, they were wrong about us ending up the same. Even now I admire you, how your hands lay luminous and crossed, steamed into the gold of many histories, and how your eyes remain unfired and cloud-like, as if held under the weightless custody of stars. Where I come from, people turn red at thoughts of being buried naked. For 7 years, Mrs. Knight rehearsed her death, ironing the pink gown she would one day die in. And my father took with him 2 sacks of misery, big as bird nests under each eye and no shame. He wasn't very pretty, Tut, and even though I've never seen it, I still believe in frail and simple death. They tell me your people fooled with acupuncture, boiled exuberant herbs for migraine and madness, and how you could charm the servant girls couched on your harsh and beaded world, chewing monographs out of mosaic bowls. But what have you ever done for my uncle's bad heart, Tut? Where I come from, heaven is flying off to a better swap meet. and laziness is just another case of the stray dog blues. It must be hot, having your eyes gilded shut, your body bound in silks where the only cool thing that moves in you is someone else's breath. Where I am, there is plenty of space for the wind to fit and swirl, and every now and then the sun swindles its way in. Lots of room for my ashes to take on flesh. My mother is still scraping leftovers for the cat. I smell Mama Bada's pizza and cheap tobacco spilling out of the pockets of old men asleep on the porch. And sometimes I wonder what mess Johnny Mendez will be in when he gets here. No, Tut, your bones were put together someplace else. You will remain young and untarnished, because what we want to remember is your bronzed and unripened face, your blank and tender eyes. In the next finger of wind, we'll walk down my street, where I happen to be very important, because where I come from, Tut, all the dead are vanished jewels. This next poem, well, the images in this next poem teeter kind of between that time between dusk and darkness, complete darkness even. As you all obviously know, dusk is a gorgeous time. But I think if people were to ask me the worst part of the day, emotionally, I would consider dusk. It's been forever, I suppose, for me. It's a time when I'm the most reticent, the most uncommunicative. If I seem to be having fun or laughing, I'm usually faking it. And also in this poem is addressed to an aunt of mine who died about a year ago. And she died at dusk, and I remember, in looking back, that the times that we used to talk the most, or the most talkative, was at dusk. And then we would be really perked up as if we would welcome the darkness. And sometimes I wonder if she had that apprehension for dusk that I do. And I also wonder right now, at that time, at that very ecliptical time of the day, which is dusk, how she's doing. Winter eclipse. Scant moonlight and frost trickle and shine between the peach groves. The grasses bend white in the farm hands' sleep, and my bed is a parcel of fog rising from the tules. They say the river won't crack till February, and tonight my neighbor the schizoid is taking a turn for the worst. Young boys trade peeks at the girl next door who fans her winter breasts into the mirror. And the bees have froze to death inside the bramble. The sun has closed its umbrella to the drunks who seal themselves into condemned garages and beat their legs to check the cold while the wind teeters and snickers outside the window. And I imagine your eyes inside me, Aunt Chuta, leading me across the old vacant lot, straddling the pigeon paths as if they were wide waters towards your house, under a sky ladled with snow and nourished by silence. And I can see you, straining out of that stiff bed to find me at the doorstep, still inhaling the vapors of your death, and you waving me in, allowing one quick glance into that obscure cogwheel of stars where you now live. I'm glad that Chuck and Diane Hanzlicek are here because I got a poem for them. Well, I knew and admired Hanzlicek's poetry long before I met him. And then he bought a pool table and I got to know him a lot better. Not only that, I've been on the marvelous fortune, I've had the marvelous fortune of all being welcomed into their home by Diane and Leah and all those birds and that goofy tortoise. But the fact is that we're very intense, vehement opponents in pool. At pool. We love the game. We love the whole scene. I love walking into that room and smelling the chalk. I love the two lamps that are above the pool table that kind of shine on this green felt table and all those multicolored demons that frustrate us so much. And I also love, I love the smoke kind of drifting by those two lamps. But most of all, I love the crack of that rack when you make a break ball in 14-1 call shot. That crack that you want your opponent to hear. That crack that sort of says, stick that one in your brain, crack. This next one's for your mama, crack. I'm very competitive. Jack knows that. As a matter of fact, I think if we were judged by how we play the game, Buddha would certainly declare Chuck the winner. But I would be, actually, Attila the Hun would be very, very proud of me. I've gone into this long thing because this poem, what I've described has nothing to do with the poem. It's not about pool. Chuck has two terrific pool poems. But what it has to do with is a dream I had one night, and in that dream, I was trying to light the kitchen stove, and my hand caught on fire. I run to the kitchen sink trying to douse the flames. It didn't do any good. The phone rang. It's Hanzlicek on the line. He says, can you shoot pool? Well, I've got this hand on fire. I can't shoot pool. But I say, yeah, tomorrow, 12:30. And then I woke up. I said, God, what a courageous act. I felt I had this superior attitude for about 5 minutes. What macho. But there's another side to it. The other side of courage or machoism is always there's an act of cowardice. And what it could be is that I didn't want to tell him that tomorrow my hand would be this slice of over-crisped bacon because I didn't have the guts to expose my deformity to a friend and to have undervalued that friendship to think that he would reject me because of it. So in this next poem, I continue that act of cowardice. I put a little note on their door that basically says, I don't want my friends to see me as a cripple. The hand that once held fire. Dearest friends, don't let my scabs unravel you. I do well with shoestrings, and this bleached out body would be incomplete if not charred in some way. Think of this. In the afternoon I spill my soup, and by dusk the flies swarm everything below the elbow, but I still have my left one to tear my hair out and dial for house calls at 3 a.m. Each time I unwrap the bandage, I uncover a new sprout peeking out of the dead skin. Yesterday, I was a decoy for the bees, cringing in the thoughts of sunlight. And before that, a napping phoenix, and then a blue gem bundled in black gauze, and though no longer a pair, you can still find me smuggled deep into the closest pocket, apart from the rest of me. My waves scalded, and my memory a singed bird. Moulton mentioned, is this thing picking up okay?
Yeah.
Do you think I need it? Moulton mentioned he has a radio show now, and I was on that disastrous debut. Where are you, Moulton? I'm sorry. It wasn't too good. Over the phone, he asked me to bring a poem. When I get down to the radio station, he starts talking about this poem. And one of the embarrassing moments is that I forgot to bring it. So I promised him I would read it here tonight. Except I forgot to bring it. It's a short poem called Catacombs of St. Calixtus. What I'm trying to do is capture a sense of sublime, even macabre, that I felt going through the catacombs in Rome. Regardless of the history, the catacombs, of course, are where the Christians, the underground burial sites of the Christians that were slaughtered by the Romans. Catacombs of St. Calixtus. Who then lives in the sandstone, crammed between the spores of earth and air? No one here to sing your dead to sleep, and we were fooled, friend, to believe that dying was like treading the wind. Who then set the spark to the lightning bolt, allowed the thin aspen to tremble? Come, let's walk the stairs, past the axe scar at the back of the skull, past the pulse fluttering in your neck. The crows outside are outliving the branches. The world is cold and sad. It's not time yet to change clothes with the dead. They can feed themselves. On this occasion, I always bring my watch to a reading, and then I always forget to look at the time. Was this intended for me? I know this was. This is a plot. Hanzlicek has a plot. He's trying to psych me out. I used to work at a psychiatric hospital. Some of my friends from that psychiatric hospital are here. How they managed to escape as a group is quite remarkable. But it wouldn't have happened on my shift. And I don't know if I've ever told it, but one of the hardest things for me to do was, and it didn't happen very often, but was to try to talk someone into going to therapy. Largely because I wouldn't want to be talked into going to therapy. I wouldn't want to be forced into it. And to me, there's this enormous difference between choosing on your own to go and actually being forced. It's as if someone thinks that you have lost the faith and the capacity to take a good look at yourself. And not only that, it's very frightening. I'm a private person, and maybe even secretive, I don't know. That's what my mother tells me, I'm secretive. And I can just imagine going into this therapy room and having this fat Rogerian psychiatrist who kind of folds his hand on his belly and his fingers are always twittering and telling me that you now have 1 hour to tell me all you know about yourself. Well, if I knew about myself, I wouldn't be there in the first place, and he doesn't have to threaten me In a lot of ways, that's a threat. He says, tell me everything you know about yourself, or I will threaten you with craziness for the rest of your life. And of course, I would ramble on out of this sense of fright, this sense of nervousness. Maybe in a very scattered fashion, and of course, when I'm done, even though he doesn't say it, it'd be very unethical to say it, but I might catch that expression in his face that says, yeah, you are crazy. But not only that, you're a real asshole. And so I tried to kind of make a point of being in with that doctor. What I would tell him, being in that state of nervousness for an hour. And the poem is called Inside the Hourglass. I count the mice scrambling between the walls, and yes, it's true, I'll set the mattress on fire given the chance, and turn unbearably bold when I see blue. Last night I dreamed I'd been born out of the liquid of a glassblower's flask, spiraled and polished, honed to fit the light until he dropped me, scattered my mold to smithereens, and that's why there's no such thing as order or will. New dink in the plaster, crack in the ceiling heading east, and I know chocolate and cigarettes always make me skittish, and if it's true that it's safe to dream of things that time sends back, then come back to me in that white, crisp dress of July. Whisper me whatever happened to Nasty Lopez and Fat Robert Freed, and do their hands still stink of gasoline and fermenting hate? And what time of year was it when Vera's tomboy legs rippled into grace? Often, and at night, I feel rain like fish hooks slant into my eyes, and can see half of me sparkling in the gutter, and the other half a leaf print among the blurred street with its body being dissolved miles away, and for no reason find myself laughing, knowing all too well that soon my mouth will be stitched clean, my eyes pooling the window really steamed, afraid to know my own story about the screams I hear, the scenes I make, when I enter into that brittle sleep, into that dark weather that must have a mind all to its own. Thank you. I feel like Mick Jagger. Some friends of mine, two friends, a man and a woman, their name is Jim Rossi and Patty Rossi, were expecting a child, so they went to these natural birthing classes. And they asked me to be a coach? Yeah. A coach. Coach Weinberg. A coach for one of their other children, which I gladly accepted. I thought this was going to be a marvelous experience. And it was. But on delivery night, there was a very minor complication, so they didn't go through the process that they had originally learned. And I became rather useless. And when the baby finally arrived, I don't think I ever saw my friend Jim Rossi so full of glow, so proud and ebullient, that he actually asked me to write a poem for him. And me being caught up in that excitement said, sure, why not, it's easy. Then realizing I wasn't even in the room, I had no idea what went on. I mean, Patty delivered this child, and like everybody's happy. Hell, I was in that goddamn coffee shop all night long, listening to these waitresses moan about their husbands. You want a poem about that? Okay, I got one. So, besides that, he didn't even offer me any money. Jesus. Already he's taking a small step towards immortality, and he's not paying the extra buck. I mean, of course, that last part is all bullshit. Because it was a very rich experience for us both, bless his heart. But I was faced with that predicament. I didn't know what went on, really. On my way home, I saw this tree house. And it just happened so quickly. I saw Jim underneath that tree house, kind of musing up at the sky. And the child that had just been born was up there sleeping with her siblings. And of course, Jim, the ever-watchful father, was down below, that cheap sucker. Children asleep in a treehouse. They sleep under a web of clouds, tired birds tossed in mud and straw. Their budding snores attract bats, and the silver puffs of their breath roll into hollow caves of light, a perfect haven for moths. Night unwinds its dark spool. Father watches from below, slaps mosquitoes and drinks whiskey under the green wave of the arbor. He whispers out to them in vain that it is good to sleep soundly in what you've built, and nothing could be simpler to him than that. Asleep among the fallen leaves and snapping branches, snagged in the heights of their own dreams, the children's faces fuse into the cold granite of night, into the chill that winds through the lattice of stars, and by midnight, what will be left of them but the treble of their voices, calling out for us to help them down, asking to take a step toward us into our crib of pain. Starting to throw these things away already. I like personification poems a lot. I like to write them. I think you really stretch your imagination in a lot of ways. By personification, I mean taking on that voice or attitude that typically doesn't have a voice. I've done it a lot with birds and cats and dogs, and my last disaster was one with a snake. In this one, I tried to take on the voice of the wind, and by some strange reason, well, it's not so strange, I was challenged by it. But I did try to create a sense of omnipotence the wind has, both frightening and soothing, and all that all-encompassing power that we're left under, sometimes under its spell. And it's a 5-part poem, 5 semi-short parts. I also wrote it when I was under duress. I was being threatened by employment, for crying out loud. So that it might be a little abstract in that sense. It is abstract. If Chuck Moulton doesn't understand it, it's abstract. It's called Spirits of the Wind. Black yarn of sky closes in on the horizon's rim. A single line of thread strung out by God's hand, above which a cluster of white birds hover in curiosity. 2 cloud vessels crash, one black, the other white, scatter the snow-flecked birds into oblivion, and rain will melt the cities. It will be heaven and hell merging under my counsel. I place old men into cane chairs at the edges of islands. Their shoulders sway to the rhythm of the hypnotic palms, waiting for the water to lap their feet and for sleep to tassel their eyes. When their bodies become a burden to the sea, I take them inside me. I lift them through a vortex of ether and stars, fill in the gaps of their long-lost speech. Sleep is a blue hydrangea bending its head against my will. A sailor got drunk and lost his boots, fell asleep in the park with a triangle of moonlight patterned on his face. Brooding angel, left hand of my senses entered as a breeze through the glade, rearranged the rooms built inside the eyes of the sleeper, then took off in a wisp by the path of the bronze-berried bushes. I praised the night sky by myself and the labor of angels, holding my hard eye on the dreamers. It is one thing to love a fugitive, to waltz nude on the porch when the moon is going down, to regard me and the owl as the same, and to consider the rectangle of stars reflected on the kitchen floor as a place no one had ever stepped before. It is another thing to walk through an empty room as if walking into your heart, picking up the broken glass and waiting for the bourbon to wear off. And when the sirens have faded away into the distance and the ambulance attendants play cards under the fluorescent light, and whether you're drunk or not, I'll be across the street in the dark, inside the sycamore, watching you, invisible to all who may desire me, transient and very cold. I speak through the hull of clouds, through the match that won't stay lit. I'll circle you like death, like mane spreading up the back of your dog. I'll set your eyes on fire and fan the flames, and for a while, my breath will be your breath, enough to make you lightheaded and think you'll never die. I'll keep your wife up all night weeping in the hallway and telegraph bad dreams to your sad children. I'll never stop the dust from swirling in your attic, and I'll give you hope that whatever it was you loved will in the end kill you. Let's wrap this up with a love poem. I don't know. I don't know about you, but when I fall out of love, I can think of a dozen reasons what went wrong, and they're all true. When I'm in love, I can also think of a dozen reasons, and they're all false. So I resort to superstition, like some athlete on a hot streak who wears the same bracelet or little charm around his neck or wears his baseball cap to bed. And of course, then superstition becomes one of those reasons that things didn't work out in the first place. It can be very difficult loving someone who refuses to change their underwear. Omens. Never watch a dog take its shit. Finish all the food on your plate or tomorrow it will rain. When you move into a new house, eat nothing but black bread for a week so the beggars won't come to your door. Screen all your windows so the birds of death can't fly through your rooms. Never allow a strange woman to buy you a drink, or she'll crush your heart like a leaf. Each night from the mirror, I watch my woman undress. Her beauty is enough to shatter most men's eyes, but not mine, because I always empty my pockets before going to bed, never wash my socks on Wednesday or swear when the wind blows above 20. All day I whimper like a lunatic, but when she enters the bed, I leave it up to the gods. I give in to a little luck. Thank you very much.